Welcome back to the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike, and I'm coming at you with another video. This time I want to talk to you about why Earthrise is the best that Hasbro's given us in the G1 realm, and why I'm excited. And I know some people aren't actually excited about this, but I'm going to compare it to the other older versions, and say other modern versions and modern takes, and I'm going to show you why it's so good. Like you saw in the thumbnail, you got a whole lot of that coming at you, so let's get right into it. So I am going to start with Wheeljack, but before I get into starting with Wheeljack, I want to say that if you bought Siege figures, don't be dumping them. Don't be getting rid of them. There's not going to be as much spillover in multiple characters getting remade. The majority of the Siege characters that are made are not going to get remade in Earthrise, or at least I don't believe so. But anyway, I've got another video. I'm going to talk about that down the road later this week. This here is a comparison. And we're starting with the classics, moving into the Combiner Wars version, and then now Earthrise. And if you look at the three of these, you look from the left to the right, you can see that each one of them has some good representation of the character. Each one of them has pluses and minuses. In fact, none of the three are absolutely perfect. But if you're just looking at this, and you're saying, which one looks closest to G1? Well, you see the one on the right here. Now, I've always thought that the classics, when they came out in like '06, that it was just a little too beefy for my liking. And beefy and kibbly and all that. The Combiner Wars came out and it was a lot slimmer and trimmer, but it did feel cheap, to say the least. It just didn't feel right. But looking at the Earth Wars one. Now, I say this is, in my opinion, one of the weaker of the Earthrise figures, and yet it still looks good. I mean, you have to admit, this thing looks pretty good. Let's compare it to the animation. And when you look at the Earthrise versus the animation, not 100% perfect. And my biggest complaint with this is the lower legs. But in the end, this isn't a true masterpiece. It's still mainline chug for 20 bucks. You're not spending 80 bucks or 120 bucks on a masterpiece version. And so there are some give and takes. And then also the kibble on the hands. But really, aside from the kibble on the hands, the lower legs just so thick, it's a great representation of the character. But even in the masterpiece version, the lower legs are way thicker than the animation cell. Now here's the alt modes, and actually on the left you're going to see I'm including the Prime, animated. And that was a pretty cool toy in itself, but of course the alt mode didn't match the G1. And so if you're looking across these, yes, this is the most G1-esque look, and we'll get better pictures as time goes by, but this is just kind of a quick comparison. So we have, of course, classics on the left, we have in the middle the Combiner Wars one, and then Earthrise, and yeah, it looks good. It's still a bit stylized from what the G1 toy was, and the animation based off that, but it's the closest that we've gotten. Next up, I want to talk about Cliffjumper, and so this is the best looking Cliffjumper we have seen. On the left you have the classics, which I thought was extremely panely and bit stylized. Then we had whatever they were doing with the Legends Cliffjumper, and now we've got Earthrise. And again, I still assume they're going to reuse this mold for the Runabout Runamuck. Just assuming, just guessing. We'll see if that comes true. But overall, it captures the character way better. The chest isn't orientated correctly, but I don't know if there'll be a way to fix that, or if that just is what it is. But in the end, I'm not picking it to death. It looks good. I like the way this thing looks, and it's a vast improvement over what we have seen. Here he is next to the Toon, and he looks a lot closer than anything else we have gotten. Still not quite the whole chest piece. I would have liked to see Hasbro flex their muscle and throw out a faux chest piece. Wouldn't that be cool? Now, I think it would have been cooler if it looked like a penny eraser. Alright, so here's a comparison of alt modes, and just trying to get pictures that line up just right are hard. But here we go. On the left is the Classics, which was a deluxe, and on the right is going to be the new Earthrise, which is a deluxe. And the Classics has kind of an inspired shape to the Penny Racer, and then the one on the Earthrise, it's not even trying to be the Penny Racer. So, and I already told you why I think that is, because they want to remold it and run amok. So there it is. It looks good. I mean, it's a cool looking Transformer. It's going to be a great addition to a collection. So next up I want to talk about Hoist. Hoist is really underrepresented in the modern collection and probably one of the most anticipated figures coming out of Earthrise. And I think he looks good down to his backup arm kibble, which I'm going to accept is animation correct. And I'm going to accept that the best masterpieces have that. So I think this is a pretty good release. And I didn't even notice, but some people pointed out that he's got some dirt or battle damage or something on the front of his chest. I almost thought that the battle damage thing was not going to enter into the Earthrise line, but now I see that, so it's there. But this is a vast improvement over what they gave us in 2013. And in 2013, they were going really stylized and leaning towards, and then that whole era there was leaning towards IDW inspired because I guess the comic and all that. But anyhow, looking at this thing, it looks good. And looking at it compared to G1, the actual G1, and the Thrilling 30, you see that it's vastly superior, looks really good, it's pretty exciting. Here he is compared to his animation, and it does look in this frame that he's way lighter than the animation, but you know, the colors change, the shadings and all that stuff, and of course we do discuss that some of it's poorly drawn. I think this looks great. Looking at the alt modes, and this is a more G1-esque alt mode, better looking alt mode, and I know people have complained there's not a crane on it. It's just it's different, but I do want to point out how this it'll obviously be a trailbreaker down the road, and I was underwhelmed by the first release in both modes, and I know we've gotten another trailbreaker in the Combiner Wars, so Hoist is a little underrepresented, so glad to see him. Next up is Grapple, and I don't think they've made a decent Grapple since the G1, and they went full on almost masterpiece with this thing, and I really think it's the best looking overall of the entire Earthrise, and it needs to be. The thing is that since we haven't seen one, we saw a Universe one and other iterations, but I'm talking about just the G1 here. This thing looks amazing, and just compared to what we've had in the past, even if you just compare it to the G1 itself, it's more G1 than G1. It's impressive. I like it, excited about it, and I think it just does everything right. Can't wait to get my hands on it, do a review. Alt modes, it looks good. The one for the Earthrise is such a G1 inspired look, and of course added playability and all of that, and it looks better than the G1. But here's the point about that. I feel like the original 80s G1 figures were more towards the alt mode. So they had great looking car modes, airplane modes. Those look spot on to the real world. The bot modes suffered drastically. And I don't feel like this alt mode is suffering nearly as bad as if you look at the G1 alt mode here. And I do also think that the Universe alt mode looks good. It's not a bad looking mode. But Earthrise kills it. Next up we have the Earthrise Starscream, and this one has had a lot of people saying that it's just the upscaled version of Classics, which by the way would not have bothered me at all, except for the fact that that's not what they did. And they said they took inspiration from others and all of that. The more I look at it, the more I think it looks good, and I could make it look great with posing, with possibly pulling some of the kibble off. I mean, there's some things that probably could be done. And with this, I think that they took a lot of inspiration from classics, but not all. And you just look, it's all new molding. It's all new everything. It probably shares the transformation. It probably shares some of the engineering, or all of the engineering, but it's been redone. And you can look at this and see this picture and tell. And my biggest concern with this is the lower legs. And if you look at the classics version, the lower legs are much cleaner. If you look at the feet, they're redesigned completely, because it's not like the feet just fold up on the bottom like classics. The feet tuck in, I think. I think that's why the feet look like that. And the lower legs are deeper than in the classics. So with all of this, what does it matter? It's a good looking figure. Now, a lot of people are saying they feel like they wasted their money buying Siege, and I've got all these Tetrajets that now I need to get rid of so I can buy these. The thing is, Tetrajets are something that we've not gotten before. And I think the Siege Seekers look great. Now, I only have the Thundercracker right now that just came out because I think it's a cool looking one. But I don't think we're going to get all of the Seekers that were made as Tetrajets remade and repainted in this form. I don't think we'll get Rainmakers. I don't think we'll get the red one that we got there. I don't think we'll get all of that. I think we might get the core 3. But we're just now in Siege getting Thundercracker. And they make it hard to get. You have to buy a 3-pack of 2 figures you don't even want if you want to get Skywarp. So that's a challenge. I don't think they'll do that to you here. I think we'll just get straight up releases of the main 3. And that's about it. And yeah. Someone also made a good point that we'll probably see the Coneheads. Here he is next to animation, and animation shows him without the kibble on his legs and shows the legs a lot cleaner. Of course, that's just animation, and we are dealing in the real world, but still I think it's a great representation. Here are the alt mode comparisons, and the classics is a lot sleeker and cleaner. The newer one has a lot more line work to it, and that adds a touch of realism to it, I guess you could say. But yeah, there's the big differences, and you can tell right here they're not exactly the same. They're not carried forward. You can see a lot of differences in how the transformation is going to be different, and the panel lines and all that stuff. But anyway, still pretty cool. Next up, I'm going to talk about the Earth Wars Prime. Now, we could stand here all day talking about Prime for sure, because you could go back and find all these different versions of Prime, and like, which one do you like the most, and all of that. I will say that on the left we have the Combiner Wars. Then we have the Power of the Primes, and we have Earth Wars. And then I'll compare Earth Wars to Siege in just a minute and tell you about that. But I did not care for the Combiner Wars version so much, although I understand that it's really cool what they're doing with just giving you more combining options and just kind of a fun gimmick for the youngsters, because my youngest kid loves that a lot. For the Power of the Primes one, I liked the gimmick and I liked the direction we're going with Toon, and that's where you started seeing some Masterpiece-esque representation in the bot mode, not the alt mode at all. And then there was, I like the whole idea. Like, this whole line was a great idea. Some of it was executed better than others, but when you just have the Orion packs in the chest and pop out and all that stuff, that is so cool. I loved that a lot. But getting into the Earthrise version, he just looks super Toon. It's like the giant evolutionary leap by Hasbro in the main line. And so I'm excited, and he looks good. But what if you had already bought the Siege version? So if you already bought the Siege version and you're saying, man, I wish I would have waited, and well, guess what? That's true to a point. But I want to throw a couple things out there. First of all, the Siege one was only $30. You're going to have to pay $50 for this one. The Siege one looks good. I personally like the way the Earthrise looks better. But now people are saying, well, you know what? I've got a Siege one. I'm going to get the Earthrise, and I'm going to swap heads because I like the head on the Earthrise, on the Siege better, the eyes better. I don't know. I think it's a different head sculpt too, to tell you the truth. But with all of that, either one's great. I just think that the Earthrise is an evolutionary step. But what really bothers me is the alt mode. I just think that the Earthrise alt mode destroys the Siege alt mode, and I pulled the trigger on the 30th anniversary, the cel-shaded version of the Siege, and I don't feel bad about it because I don't know if we'll get a 30th anniversary cel-shaded version of the Earthrise one. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the Siege alt mode, and I'm starting to look at this. I'm starting to wonder how much of the engineering they're sharing. Like, how much similarity is there going to be between the transformations? How much is it going to, like, the same design, they just reshape the panels to smooth it out and look more G1? I don't know. But anyway, I'm excited about Earthrise. I hope you guys are too. I hope you enjoyed this little retrospective of comparisons to other modern lines. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and then let me know what you think about all this in the comments. But here, hanger out.